Talkline Network Radio, America's longest-running Jewish broadcast network, the voice of the Jewish community.
Welcome to the podcast.
You are now tuned in to this episode of our podcast. Today we are going to interview some of the greatest and most influential minds in our field. And now, please welcome your host.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Zev Brenner. The Yiddish are coming from all over. The Yiddish are coming. Yiddish is enjoying a revival from people from literally all over the globe for 57 years. Yivo, which people know as Preservation of Yiddish Culture and Heritage, has also been teaching Yiddish culture and about Hasidim, and we'll talk about that right now. Joining us is Ben Kaplan, Director of Education for Yivo Institute of Jewish Research. Dovid Braun is the Academic Director of the Yivo Bart Uriel Weinreich Summer Program in Yiddish Language, Literature, and Culture. And every year for 57 years, they brought together people to immerse themselves in Yiddish. Thank you for joining us. Farganigan.
Farganigan, pleasure.
So who is learning Yiddish? You have the most intensive courses in summertime. You do stuff year round. So who is learning Yiddish? Who wants to learn the language?
I would say everybody, anybody and everybody. We don't have a profile. We don't have a uniform profile for the typical Yiddish student. Just like, anybody learning anything is not typically profiled at the university. And we give university courses. This is for university credit if people want it. These 6 weeks that we immerse our students in Yiddish. And they come from all age ranges. This year alone, we had students from age 16 through 86. And they come from all interests, and they come from all religions, and they come from all backgrounds, and they come from all native languages, and they come from all eye colors and skin complexions. Now, of course, naturally, it is a majority of Jews who are interested in this because Yiddish language is a language of the Jewish people and grew up over the past 1,000 years among them. But the reasons are varied. Some are interested in cultural heritage, in reclamation, in family lore, in genealogy, in documents. Some are academics who are getting degrees in various areas that touch upon Yiddish. So there's no one profile of a Yiddish student.
No, but I noticed that you have people from Iran, Italy, China, Moldova. So why would somebody in China want to know, and you have more than one Chinese individual, from what I understand, studying Yiddish. Why would somebody from, let's say, that part of the world want to know Yiddish?
Well, the Chinese person is a perfect example. This is a student this year that we had who is from China and is currently studying in London, I believe. And he took the Yiddish summer program over Zoom. He didn't come to us in New York. We have two programs essentially in this larger program. There are two modalities of it. And this is somebody who got an initial course in London and found Ashkenazic culture and history fascinating, and then realized, I think he's an intellectual historian, but just beginning his studies, so we'll see where he ends up in the next couple of years, was fascinated also by his own culture and discovered that in the early period of the last century, when China and Chinese culture and Chinese intellectual culture was undergoing a sort of revolution, similar things happened between the treatment by Chinese intellectuals to Chinese as what happened in the world of Yiddish and Jewish intellectuals in Eastern Europe as they were figuring out what to do with and how to treat their language. So he gave us a presentation, in fact, that students take part in self-generated presentations throughout our 6 weeks, so they can teach us what we don't know about them and about their intellectual worlds. He discovered that the Chinese intellectuals of the 1920s already had their eye on Eastern European Yiddish speakers in Vilna and Warsaw, etc., in that same time, and they looked back at the Chernovitz Conference of 1908, the first major conference that dealt with the Yiddish language as a Jewish question of how to incorporate that language or how to associate that language with Jewry. Is it the national language, the international language, the only language, one of many languages, etc.? And the Chinese were doing the same exact thing. They had the finger on the pulse of what was going on in Chernovitz and in Vilna and in Warsaw, and were inspired. And, there was a movement once upon a time, over 100 years ago, to write Chinese in Latin characters so that the whole population could become literate instead of the pictogram situation that Chinese has. And they looked at the spelling reforms that went through, that were first discussed at the Chernovitz conference in 1908, and were inspired by that. So, phenomenal. Here, the Chinese 100 years ago and this young Chinese man are interested in and learning what the Yiddish were doing way back when. And here we, the Yiddish ourselves, get to learn about our effect and our inspiration towards other cultures. Quite amazing.
Go ahead, Ben. You were going to say something.
Yeah, I was just saying, in short, Yiddish is an important language in academia today for historical research, for archival research, and we have, as Dovid's referencing, students in Holocaust studies, students in German studies, and literary studies, in many different fields of academia who need the language. It becomes an essential language in their research, and so they will go on to publish new books of history that incorporate primary source materials. Yivo has millions of documents in the Yiddish language and in other languages as well, but it's a really important part of the history, not just in Eastern Europe, as Dovid was mentioning, but in how the Jews of Eastern Europe interacted with other cultures and other civilizations.
Now, my daughter went through Yivo Yiddish. She's actually Yiddish major. She's now in Harvard, though, immersed in Yiddish. But Ben, tell us about the curriculum. What are you teaching? Are you teaching the language, the culture? I noticed you teach about Hasidim. Let's get involved into it. Take us there.
Sure. So in the summer program, we have 3 core courses. Everyone takes every day a language course. Dovid teaches those in the higher levels. And they also take a literature course. And we usually have anywhere from 4 to 6 levels of proficiency, from complete beginner. You don't need any prior background.
Are they reading in Yiddish or are they reading in English?
They're going to be reading in Yiddish, yes. And so, you're getting this full immersion in the language and in the culture. So you take
those. Reading Shalom Aleichem, Isaac Bashevis Singer, Shalom Ash. What are you reading?
Yes. And also, right. It depends on the level. It depends on the teacher. But we have those canonical writers like Shalom Aleichem and Isaac Bashevis Singer. And then we have more off the beaten path writers. We've incorporated, curricula these days incorporate more women writers who were not included in the canon originally, but have been really brought back in, and other writers from different regions that may not have been in the primary canon, but have been added in current literary studies that are important to look at. So everyone takes the language courses, the literature courses every day, and they also take what we call a shmuas, or a conversation course, 3 times a week. So you're getting that speaking practice as well. We treat Yiddish as a living language, of course, and we want to make sure that all those language skills are being reinforced. And then beyond those core required courses, we typically have many different seminars, electives, lectures on varying topics from different scholars from around the world, and workshops. And we have a music workshop, a singing workshop. We have a theater workshop. We teach students how to decipher Yiddish handwriting in documents. We usually have electives on rotating topics, on different aspects of Yiddish language, history, and culture.
What do you teach about Hasidim? I noticed that was part of the curriculum.
Yeah, so we had a literature seminar this year that was focused on Hasidic culture and the literary output of Hasidic culture across the centuries, and that was taught by Mark Kaplan. So that's just an example of various courses we might have throughout the years, and we also do walking tours for the students who come to us in New York City. So we did a tour of Hasidic Williamsburg. We got a chance to go into the Hasidic community and see what it's like in a Yiddish-speaking community today in New York City.
Just 2 years ago, we had a lecture. Was it 2 or 3? We had a guest lecture. We have a series of lectures that's associated with the program for our students. These are scholars who focus on very specific areas of the very broad topic of Ashkenazic history and culture. And we had a specialist who comes from the Hasidic community in New York, and who is also a PhD linguist in the field. And she gave us a talk. This is Dr. Chaya Rochel Nove. She gave us a talk about the Yiddish of current New York area Hasidim.
And that's different than the Yiddish that you teach at Yivo. You have more, right? That's Hasidic Yiddish is different.
Well, every Yiddish is different because there are many dialects. And what we teach at Yivo inside the classroom is, essentially classroom Yiddish, the standards that have arisen over the past 120 years for public usage that is non-dialectal, non-local, and don't pinpoint you as coming from any particular community.
Yeah, but the point is, though, you probably have the biggest Yiddish-speaking population in the world is the Hasidic community.
Right now, yeah.
Thousands of people.
Sure.
So wouldn't it make more sense to teach that dialect? Because if they go to Hasidic Williamsburg or they go any place, the chances are they're going to speak that kind of Yiddish.
Well, if they're only here for speaking Yiddish, that's true. But if they're also interested in researching Yiddish and speaking with anybody who is not of the current day Hasidic usage population, then they need to know standard Yiddish in order to be able to read.
What do you call that? Volkssprach?
Not sure what that is.
Volkssprach, I guess that's the everyday language. Isn't that an expression? Volkssprach? People speak?
Well, maybe Volkssprach. Volkssprach,
Yeah.
The people's language. The people's language, though, is really everything outside of the classroom language, right? So that's all the dialects that are out there.
Now, notice music. What Yiddish music do you portray? Do you feature in the classroom or in the course?
We have an elective on Yiddish music, and we have a number of teachers for it and a number of performers who join it as well. So we have in-house representatives of Yiddish music from the Yivo sound recording department, and at the same, who are the experts on printed and recorded Yiddish music and musicology. And then we have performers as well who lead song sessions and teach our students some of the basics and also some of the off the beaten track, but phenomenal.
I give them the more contemporary, because where the biggest Yiddish music is in the Hasidic community. In fact, we used to carry the Forward radio show, which was in Yiddish music, culture, etc. But in the final years of the Forward radio show, they featured people like Lipa Schmelzer because that's what was in vogue.
Sure. And we've actually had a number of the current day Hasidim or kind of ex-Hasidim or on their way out, but into the modern Orthodox world of great singers doing special interviews with us and special Verbrengens.
You have Hasidim that have taken the courses, so they don't need to. They know Yiddish. I'm just curious if any of them participate.
Well, they actually do need to, because many of them cannot write their native language. Remember that they're often not schooled in their native language. So they come knowing Yiddish natively, but without comfort reading it or writing it, since their schooling is limited in Yiddish.
They don't read Yiddish. They have a vibrant Yiddish press, and you have online, so I can understand why wouldn't they be able to read it if they have all these publications that they're reading?
Because they're not taught it at school. They're typically not taught it at school. If they are reading, not everybody reads, and not everybody reads to the same extent. And remember also that many of these communities are quite bilingual with English and Yiddish, or with Yiddish and Hebrew, or with Yiddish and Flemish in Antwerp, so that not everybody is schooled or is a typical Yiddish reader who comes from a Yiddish-speaking household.
Called English, I guess, the Yiddish and English, right? Open the fence, there used to be the word, open the window, I heard. And
right.
English is incorporated into Yiddish.
Just like every language is incorporated in every language whenever two communities of different languages are meeting and incorporating each other.
Anybody from Gaza or Lebanon or any of these countries have been, I know Iran, you have somebody. What about the other countries that I mentioned? Are they also, anybody taking Yiddish from those places?
We have had students in the past couple of years, yeah.
Interesting. And did they tell you why they're taking Yiddish, if they're in Gaza or Lebanon or Saudi Arabia, etc.?
Yeah, interest in the Jewish people, interest in Jewish civilization. Remember that not everybody who is, let's say, a Saudi Arabian is a political representative of Saudi Arabia. A person might have, independence of thought and be doing a set of studies at the university and wants to understand the world, not just their country's politics.
Ben Kaplan, Director of Education for Yivo, Dovid Braun, the Academic Director of the Yivo Board. Uriel Weinreich, summer program in Yiddish language, literature, and culture. Why don't they have a Yiddish word in there too, right? Shouldn't they have a Yiddish word into the
Yivo.
Yivo? All right.
Program, and Yiddish, that's a Yiddish word. And program is a Yiddish word.
Okay.
And summer, you could argue, is
Zummer.
really the Yiddish word Zoomer, of course.
Okay. If people want to learn more about Yivo and especially the Yiddish program where people can learn Yiddish, immerse themselves in Yiddish culture, how can they do so?
You can visit yivo.org or the summer program's website, summerprogram.yivo.org.
And every year it's getting bigger. So what's on plan for next year as I let you go?
Next year, we have our centennial. So Yivo is celebrating 100 years. Yivo was founded in 1925. So we'll have our 2025 summer program, and we'll have some special programming around that. So stay tuned, everyone.
Keep it posted. The Yiddish are coming. The Yiddish are here. So thank you for being part of our show.
Thank you, Zev.
Thank you for tuning in to
Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast, the pulse beat of the Jewish community.
For continuous Jewish programs, TalklineNetwork.com, or our 24-hour-a-day listen line at 641-741-0389. For past shows, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Instagram, and all major podcast platforms, or jewishpodcast.org. Thanks for listening to the TalklineNetwork.com.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And a great job. It's already on YouTube, and we'll put it on the radio probably next week.